All right. We'll go ahead and begin. Thank you, everybody. We're starting this meeting at 5:34. We have a couple of commissioners absent tonight, but we have a quorum, so we'll proceed. Are there any announcements from any members of the commission?
Is this where we pull something off the consent calendar?
Yeah.
I'd like to pull the minutes, please.
Which minutes?
The minutes from the budget workshop on the 26th.
Okay, and so that's part of item 8.1. All right, and also I am going to pull item 10.1 off of this agenda and move it to next month's agenda, where we'll discuss it in closed session before we make a decision about it. This is 10.1, one-time payments for Y-rated SEIU members. All right, any other announcements? Okay. Any members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding items not on the agenda? Seeing no public here to do that, we'll move on to 4.1, and that is for library advisory boards and friends to make a report, and there are none to do that. And so then we will move to item 5.1, the Director Search Committee, and that is Suzanne Silva is up.
Good evening. Hi. I just wanted to provide a quick update on the Director Selection Search Committee and an updated schedule, which you all have in your packets. Do we want to put that up on the screen if that's possible? Or if not, I can.
5.1.1.
It's right, document 5.1.1.
And while we're waiting for that, I was asked to be sure to ask everybody who is speaking tonight to be sure to speak clearly into the microphones so that they can be caught by the video people, and also for make the closed caption possible.
Okay, great. Thank you. My presentation is very brief. I just wanted to provide an update that the position was posted for the library director recruitment. It was posted on the, on the, 5th of March, and it will be up until the 30th. And then the commission committee will be reviewing it at that point in time. Then there will be a first round interview schedule, and at that point in time, a short list will be, the client report will be electronically delivered to the selection committee on the 9th of April, and then a client report meeting will be held to determine the short list of candidates on April 12th. There will be a short list of candidates presented to the commission that will require a special meeting. And then the selection committee will interview the short list of candidates on the week of April 16th. After that, a reference checks will be conducted on the finalist of candidates on the week of April 23rd. And then the library commission will interview the finalist candidates the week of April 30th. So again, we're on schedule to complete the recruitment in mid-May.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? Commissioner McKenzie?
Yeah, so curious about the special meeting that's required. Is that required because of the commission schedule, or why is it required? And then secondly, since it's pretty soon, it's coming up in April, we better get on the ball about scheduling it so we can have all of us there.
Right. The posting is scheduled to come down pretty soon. So a lot of this depends on what, we can't make some of these determinations until the pool of candidates has been determined. So I have been in touch with the consultant. As you remember, this is an outside consulting firm, CPS, that is handling the recruitment. And so I've been in touch with the recruiter, or I've contacted her. I haven't received a response. So a lot of it will depend on when I hear back from her. But since I'm not handling the recruitment personally inside of HR, I'm not privy to know some of these matters personally.
Yeah, I think it's hard, as you say, we don't know how many people will apply for the position. So we would have to do a posting of that meeting 72 hours ahead of time. So we'll just kind of have to see. We want to have it as soon as we have the candidate list ready so that we can really try to stay on track with finishing this process up by mid-May and making an offer.
Right.
So I also wanted to point out, if people haven't seen the brochure, that it's on CalOps, but you can get to it easily through the library's website. There's a link to, if you go to the bottom banner where it has different things like library governance and about Sonoma County Library, if you click on careers at Sonoma County Library, it will take you to a place where you can click on directly onto CalOps, and it will take you to just the Sonoma County Library jobs posted first, and you can see the brochure at that place. So
Right. If you want to click on it, I think you can see it right there. So you can go scroll down the page, and it says Library Director.
right.
And if you continue to scroll down, and then hit the brochure, it should take
You
you,
do that flipboard.
it's up a little bit higher on the,
There.
correct. And it will say simplified version of the book on any device. And then that is it. It's a smaller version, but you can see it. So that's a script version. If you go to the actual website, it gives you a very beautifully, graphically.
It's that little thing up in the corner that's
Yes.
the brochure. But there's a way to bring it up where it's big.
If you go to the CPS HR website, you can see it there. So if you go back a few pages.
But there's a place that says to view the brochure.
It's CPS HR
'Cause I think
US.
it's large.
And then you can click on their current recruitments. See where it says executive recruitment? Up one, right there. That one. Executive recruitment. And then on the up two more, correct. And it says library director, that will be the second one down. It may do the same thing because, okay, and then brochure is the, right underneath the, it still does the same thing, yeah. Right.
All right, well, it looks really nice.
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, not to harp on this topic, but we do have a time frame, and on April the 12th, which is a Thursday, the selection committee is going to determine the short list of candidates, and then the following week they're going to be interviewed. But we have to have a meeting in between time. right? Present short list of candidates to the commission. So the short list is going to be determined on the 12th, on Thursday, and the following week, the interviews are happening, but we have to have a meeting before that. So that only leaves us the 13th and like the 16th. That was just my comment about her making sure that we have our meetings so we can stay on the schedule.
We could tentatively schedule it now for the 16th, because the 12th is a Thursday, so that leaves Friday and Monday, the 16th. So maybe we should tentatively schedule it for the 16th. But it does depend. I mean, if nobody applied, we won't be having that special meeting.
Well,
do we know how quickly they will make the decision? Maybe we should be doing it on Thursday instead of or on Friday instead of on Monday. I mean, they have to notify people to get them to the interviews that next week. So if we do it on Monday, we may be going further back.
Well, the interviews are starting the 30th of April.
So when they created the brochure and they posted the brochure, they basically laid out the schedule in the brochure. The recruiter posted, so this was done by an outside firm, right? Because we contracted it to be outside. And when the recruiter created the brochure and posted it, she stated all of the tentative interviewing dates. So the candidates should be aware of those dates when they apply.
so we need to get our meeting scheduled because we have no time after this is, the short list is created on the 12th, and they're going to be interviewed like 2 days later. So we just need to schedule a meeting. That's my only point, is we need to, because we all have busy schedules and we can't, at the last minute, squeeze something on there.
I don't see the dates in the brochure.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, it was my understanding that when you met with I wasn't at the meeting with the recruiter, so.
Yeah, it's all it says is, I believe that, that the 30th is the first review of applications.
Okay, well, I will make sure I get in touch with her, and by the next meeting, which is the 2nd, I'll have a final update for you.
Okay, and I have a call into her also, so.
Okay.
Between us, we can figure it out.
Well, I'll make sure I provide another update at the next meeting.
Okay.
It may just be a verbal report without a visual.
Okay,
Okay, great, thank you.
great, thank you.
Well, are we going to?
Suzanne and I are going to talk to the person, but it looks like about the 16th would be when we need to meet to review that list.
Or the 13th. So are we setting a meeting for the 16th? Yeah. Yeah, 16th and 17th.
Well, the 12th or the 16th, yeah.
16th.
I'm sorry, the 13th or the 16th. So it's a Friday or a Monday. Do we have a preference? Monday the 16th? Okay. Anybody else have a preference?
We have Finance Committee at 3 o'clock on the Monday, the 16th.
Well, then, a lot of us will be here.
They don't hear me.
Or at HQ.
Oh, you have it at HQ?
Monday.
Okay, Monday, the 16th
Coordinate
is,
it with the, if you can coordinate it with our Finance Committee.
I don't know, we'll have to coordinate.
If we don't speak, because they can't
Okay.
hear us. Yeah.
All right, so that takes us to item 5.2, and this is a presentation by Lantern. Hi, welcome.
Thank you for having us. I'm here to say a few things about Lantern and introduce Don Alameda. Lantern is a community organization for getting dedicated to
Oh,
building.
excuse me, just a second. So Clark, if you could
thank you.
please try to speak into the microphone, and if you need to lift the desk up further, somebody could probably help you with that.
Okay.
And so, what is your name?
Oh, okay. My name's Clark Mitchell, and I'm here to talk about Lantern, a community organization dedicated to building a new Sebastopol library. And we're fortunate to have Helena Whistler as one of our board members. We are a 501c3 compliant organization, but we realize that we will need to raise the bulk of the money for this new library through public funds. One of the objectives is to organize an election of people who live in the Sebastopol Library service area, including city residents and people living outside the city limits. This election for money for this new library will be after this coming November's election, because in November, Sebastopol will be voting on renewing a quarter-inch sales tax. We hope to get help from the county library for this bond measure or parcel tax measure. I trust that some of you, that maybe most of you besides Helena, have gained hard-earned knowledge about library bond elections that could give us some ideas. Lantern has a website, lanternlibrary.org, and the main reason we're here is to show you the next step we've taken with this new library process with Don Alameda, who's a Sebastopol architect who loves libraries and also specializes in designing and building public buildings and schools for his practice. He will describe why Sebastopol needs a new library, and he'll also show us the conceptual plans that he created, which show how the existing site can accommodate a larger library that would fulfill the needs of the Sebastopol Library. Please feel free to ask any questions after the PowerPoint, Don's PowerPoint presentation is over, and one of the three of us will try and answer. Thank you very much. Here's Don Alameda.
Hi, good evening. Nice to meet y'all. As he mentioned, I'm an architect in Sebastopol, and I've been doing public work architecture for the last 28 years, mostly municipal and school work, but library falls in that suit too. Looks like this thing was advancing on its own. Let me go back. And I'll walk you through where we are with things. Okay. You're familiar with that's the front elevation of the Sebastopol Library. You're all readily familiar with that. The study that we've done is basically reinforcing and trying to carry on what's already been done since 2015, is establish why we need a larger library in Sebastopol. The previous studies was Sebastopol Library Needs Assessment in 2015, 2016 Sonoma County Library Assessment, the design guidelines, and in 2017 Sonoma County Library's Facilities Master Plan touched on these points, and we've just sort of carried on from there to advance the cause, if you will. What Lantern has done so far is basic outreach, trying to create awareness, raising some money to at least do some studies. They've hosted community meetings, prepared a needs assessment, and working with library consultants on they've advanced the concept of doing a new, larger library. Where I got involved is they asked me to look at, okay, if we do a larger library, how do we achieve that, or how do we go about doing that from a construction point of view? Current and future work they've done is sharing conceptual planning, exploring feasibilities of a bond, which if we were to just rely on Sebastopol residents, if it was just a city local bond, it'd be pretty untenable. There's a little over 7,000 people in Sebastopol. I had some I do a lot of bonds for school construction, some municipal, so I had one of my consultants look at it, and it would be about $4.50 per $100,000 of assessed value per million. So if you start getting into, $8 or $9 million, $10 million bond, that's pretty untenable for that small size of a population. We really need to broaden it to the actual people that use the library, which is much more regional than just Sebastopol. One of the earlier studies basically showed that, per square foot, we're at, the recommendations that is about 0.6 square feet per capita. And if you look at where we really are, we're at 0.2. So we're considerably undersized for the size of population that we currently are. If you compare us to other municipalities or other libraries, we're about, per square foot, we're about 25% of where we ought to be. We're a half to a third where we ought to be for collections per capita, and about half of where we are for public seating and a third of public computers. So we really need the space to push those numbers more to the norm. So how do you go about doing that? Well, there's really three approaches. There's find a new parcel of land and build a new library. You temporarily relocate the library in a new location and build larger at the current location, or expand the current location in a phased approach, like I do at schools a lot, is you build around an operating facility. That's a little tough with libraries, given that you always want to be quiet. Trying to find a parcel of land that's appropriate in Sebastopol is kind of out of the question. There's really nothing to be had. So we kind of looked at the two, single-phase or multi-phase approach of expanding the current library. And it really comes down to a push, dollar-wise. Either pay more inflation, extending the project out over phases, or you pay some in renting a temporary location. Really what it comes down to is what's a lesser evil of disruption or continuity of services at the same location. And after months of thinking and looking at it, it looks like it would probably make more sense to relocate and build in one phase, one fell swoop. Is probably the best approach. The current library is just under 10,000 square feet, or actually considerably. It's about 9,300 square feet. You can see, you're probably all familiar with the library as it now. The front area has a meeting room, some restrooms and circulation area, and then there's the reading and stack area, and staff and special use in that color code. The approach that we looked at to try to expand this library, it's a relatively tight size, but it's achievable, is on the first floor, we would bump out in the front and create more reading and stack area and meeting room, and expand the square footage to about 10,700 square feet or 10,800 square feet on the first floor. Where we really need to get the numbers up as far as per capita square foot is to go 2 stories. And the second story in this approach would be to have 3 varied size meeting rooms and then a considerably larger stack area that would be on the second floor. The thought was that, maybe the adult materials downstairs and the teen and special activities like makers' rooms and such could be upstairs, just to utilize the space efficiently. With this approach, we would be about 21,000 square feet. If you have questions, please interrupt me. This is a massing model. It's a computer model. It's really not suggesting any architectural aesthetic. I'm sure everybody's got their own desire on what it ought to look like, and that would come over time once we had funding and an approach. What this really just shows is what the scale of the building would be if we enlarged it. What you see in white could be any material, and what you see in brick is existing walls. This is from the southwest corner. This is from the southeast corner. This is from the northeast corner and the northwest corner. Basically, what we're trying to achieve is, without getting into aesthetics yet, is basically have a green and a sustainable building in almost the current footprint, a little bit larger out front. There's some heritage trees that are on site that obviously we want to preserve, as well as other parts of the landscape. Our objectives would be explore passive solar shading, a lot of windows looking out, so it's just not a library that's insular, but a lot of windows, and with some discussions with some staff, even more windows where I showed here, to look out into different directions. At some point, work with a committee and develop a palette for renewable materials for exterior facade and just a whole aesthetic direction. Right now, we're just looking at how can we fund this. Also explore, one notion was to have solar on the roof and daylighting on the roof. Those three monitors would have solar on the side that you're seeing. The opposite side would have glazing to allow light in, a northern light, a soft light. And then try to get the HVAC off the roof. There's advantages for that. Basically, get some stack effect and some more natural type of ventilation going. Looking at preliminary numbers, this is kind of pre-fire numbers, but with this square footage, it would probably be about $8.5 million endeavor. It's not a small sum of money. What we're looking towards is trying to beat the bushes on what's the best approach to go about this. And it seems like a regional approach would be more tenable than a city municipal approach from looking at a municipal bond. There's something called a Melrose district that is basically that goes beyond the city, and that's one approach that we could approach to broaden the tax base is basically what we need to do. That's the end of the presentation. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Are there any commissioners with questions? Commissioner McKenzie? Commissioner May?
This is a beautiful building. I think it's gorgeous. I was having trouble hearing a lot of your presentation, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, I'm a little soft-spoken.
Yeah, so forgive me if I'm kind of repeating things, but you don't think it's possible to raise this, the amount of money that's necessary with a parcel tax or with a city tax, because it should be a broader, the tax should be extended to the larger population. But
Right.
then I'm not sure where you came down on looking for the financing, or how to finance it.
To create, one approach would be to create a special district that would actually touch on the actual users of the library. It would extend, out to Bodega Bay and other regions that frequent the library. Just to, just with Sebastopol, it's only 7,000 and some change people. That's at $4.50 per 100,000 value per million wanting to be raised. That's a substantial sum for 7,000 people. But if it was more in tune of 25,000 people, then the number gets more tenable. Well, I don't recall what was the how much? Yeah. So the previous study showed there's about 40,000 constituents that use this library. So if you spread the cost over 40,000, it's considerably less per person than 7,000.
Roughly, what would be the parameters of the special tax district?
I'm sorry, what?
Roughly, what would be the parameters of the special tax district? Like what?
The perimeters?
That's kind of the dilemma.
Yeah. I think you would look at, maybe you want to speak on this, Matthew?
To be determined.
What?
He said to be determined.
One approach is to basically look at, zip codes or cities or townships that are using from the library cards is one approach. But I would imagine, Roland Park obviously has their own library. West.
But the West County is it's a semi-rural area, and
Right.
aside from the city of Sebastopol, I don't know that there are incorporated cities within the service area of Sebastopol. So,
Yeah, so
it
you-
is kind of a dilemma to figure out how to work this up.
Yeah, it would have to be a subset of the county. I could see Bodega Bay, Occidental, Bloomfield, that area. I live out that way. My kids went to the library, a couple times a week when they were young with my wife, and they went to school in Occidental, but they always went to the Sebastopol Library, and the Occidental Library was open part-time, I think, back then. So,
I was just kind of wondering about the limits because you're talking about a population of 40,000, right? So you must have some idea what that population would be. And again,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble kind of hearing you. You're talking
Okay.
about extending it all the way out to the coast, but not any other incorporated city, obviously.
John, if you move the
incorporated
microphone
city.
a little differently, if you
sorry?
move the microphone a little differently, we
okay.
might be able to hear you better.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
That is better.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Directly.
Yeah, it's really the city of Sebastopol, and then a bunch of unincorporated regions would be the area. Again, I would fall back to those earlier studies and see where they got the 40,000 and where that 40,000 came from.
Yeah, because I can't see that population. But anyway, I thought it was a really beautiful building. My last question was just a first floor expansion, which obviously would be much cheaper. That doesn't do it, right?
No, it bumps it up, a few square feet, but you're really chasing yourself still with that, with the footprint that you've got there.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try again. Yes, if you just kept it to one story, it would be, you'd be still chasing yourself for square footage. It would increase, I think went from 9,300 to almost 11,000. So it's a really incremental
Not worth
increase.
doing.
Yeah, it would be a lot of money for a very small addition to
Right.
the building.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner May?
I preface this by saying I'm not against Sebastopol Library, but I see lots of issues that are ahead of us. One of them is currently the library is owned by the city of Sebastopol. Mm-hmm. We don't own any buildings except our annex. So my question would be, who would be responsible for this building were it to be expanded? If it were to be expanded using a broader area, it seems to me that it is an issue for the city and the county to deal with in terms of who owns, maintains, and controls that building. And so that's an area that I see we need to think about and look at.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you've had discussions with the county or the city about the expansion of the library.
We met with city council and they're favorable of it. I think as far as who maintains it and who's in charge of it, it would be the status quo, which I think the city maintains and you guys are in charge of the library itself.
We're
if
in
I'm not
charge of
mistaken.
yeah, that's an interesting issue. But that's one thing that I see as an issue in terms of doing this. The other thing I see as a potential issue is I would imagine that an increase in size results in an increase in staff and materials, et cetera, so that basically I don't know how that interaction with our budget that's tight and the needs of the community and et cetera will get all worked out. But I'll just tell you that as I hear this wonderful proposal, those are the things that come up into my mind.
Yeah, those are the tough nuts you've identified for our library and many others.
So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
And have you talked to Supervisor Hopkins about this?
I haven't personally, yes.
Oh, come on up, Clark. No, can you come up to the microphone, please?
I spoke with her briefly about it, and she does approve the idea, but she sees some of these problems like you're saying with people from the city, owning it, but being voted on by a lot more people. So that it's a little premature for her to be acting on it now, is what was her answer to me. Thank you.
So, Clark, would it be fair to say that that Lantern wanted to share this with the commission to keep Lantern in view, that it's still out there trying to work towards this? The fundraising is the big stickler. Private fundraising seems difficult at best, and so I think Lantern is looking also at another way to raise public funds, but also understands the current times that we are in as far as tax measures, after the fire and things like that, and different cities and members of the community having to renew their other sales taxes and things like that. Is that so? But the point is to really show the commission, that there is movement happening in Sebastopol, and there's still the dream to expand the library and make it more of a community center. And that's what we're working toward. And I think that, Lantern is asking also for input and help as possible if people have ideas on how best to go about this. So if I'm putting words in your mouth.
That's accurate. Thank
okay.
you. Yes.
Commissioner Hauser?
I don't have any questions for the presenters. It would have been nice if we'd gotten this earlier so I could have kind of looked at some things that we have. I have two comments. We have no money to pay for a building. And I have the same concern about whether we have money to pay for what might be a doubling of staff or a 50 to 70% increase in staff there. That's a real concern. We have a very tight budget, and we've got a lot of demands all over, and this is not a large number of people that you're talking about. So those are two things that I think I've got very severe concerns about. Before I would approve anything, and I think you're going to have to get our approval to go ahead with whatever you're going to do, I would want to have staff actually look at what the staffing cost may be so that we have a clear picture of that, so we know what we're getting, perhaps you might say, stuck with after you build it. Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia?
I agree with everything that's been said by my colleagues, except I would like to thank you for coming forward with a vision. And I do believe that it's needed, and we need to look, and that there is a community behind Sebastopol willing to work to better their library. And I thank you for that.
Thank you.
One comment I just wanted to make, and that is that the Lantern does understand that Roseland has the highest priority at this point, too, for the library. So, Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes, just one final comment. The last library that was built was in Rohnert Park, and that was built using redevelopment funds, as probably everybody knows. And I hear that there's some sort of rumblings at the state level about re-implementing some form of redevelopment funds. And if that is the case, I think contacting our local electeds and, exploring the possibility, if that happens, is it just going to be for housing, or could it be for civic buildings like this? It's worth pursuing.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay,
It
thank
was
you.
a nice presentation, thanks.
Thanks.
All right, so that takes us to Commissioner Reports, item 6.1. And I've been asked to be sure to give a report. I have to say that there have been times that I haven't given a report in the interest of keeping the agenda short. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that I've been working on. And one of the things is that the city of Sebastopol is posting my commission position on, I expect them to approve the posting of it tomorrow night at their city council meeting. It will be posted from March 29th to May 10th, and an appointment is anticipated in June that would take effect in August. So I think that that's a good time frame, and that would give me an opportunity to work with the new commissioner to bring that person up to speed. And I know other commissioners have thought of that too, and I'm not sure where their city councils are on these postings for people who are not going to continue on as when their terms end in the end of July. I attended the Friends and Foundation President's meeting on February 22nd, along with Tracy Gray, and some of the discussion that the Friends and Foundation presidents had was to share information on directors and officers' insurance. It was suggested that any of the groups that handles makes decisions and handles money look into that coverage. There was a report on raffle registration requirements, which is enlightening. And it was pointed out that all Friends of the Libraries must register with the state as public charitable trusts in order to be in step with the law. So there also was a discussion on coverage under the library's insurance, and the discussion ended with the suggestion that Friends of the Libraries who have those questions should refer them to our CFO, Ken, and that the next meeting of the Friends and Foundation President's meeting is on May 24th at the Central Boardroom. So I worked with the Director Search Committee to edit the brochure for the library director position, and as we saw, it's accessible through the library's website or directly to CalOps. I attended the Sebastopol Lab meeting on February 7th and also the Lantern meeting on February 8th, and we just had a great Lantern presentation. I met with legal counsel Ann Keck, who will be our conflicts attorney, along with Tracy Gray on March 5th, and Ann Keck will be here at our next meeting to share her draft response to the city from Rohnert Park. And I will attend the Foundation Board meeting on March 21st and the Los Cien Luncheon on March 30th. I'm looking forward to the presentation about the DACA. And that's my report, so who wants to go next? We'll start, Commissioner Neff.
I have nothing to report from Windsor.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
I attended the lab meeting in Guerneville, and we have 2 applications that I'm interviewing for the lab, which will bring us up to speed. And I will get them to Tracy as soon as I can, and hopefully we can get them on the next agenda so we can vote these people in, because we need 2 more people, and we also because of these 2 new people coming in the lab, we talked about some other people that I would really be excited about. One a youth member, and one a member of the Latino community out there. So a wife of someone we all know, but I won't disclose right now. So anyway, and we talked about some other activities, and it's been a little hobbled since we haven't had a quorum, but we did at this meeting and moving forward. So that's the big news, and I'm excited to interview the 2 people put forward, and I will get that to Tracy as soon as I can. So.
Commissioner May.
I'll just say that a recent visit to the Petaluma Library, we're talking about the remodel and the redo, and our branch manager is talking about a quiet room rather than a noise, because there were things going on everywhere. There was a meeting in the teen area, there was something in the forum room, there was something in the children's area. And it reminds me of, I got a haircut today and was mentioning the library meeting, and the person cutting my hair said, libraries are boring. And I said, oh, no, they aren't. And so I appreciate all that's happening and all that people are doing. Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia?
The Santa Rosa Lab will meet a week from this Wednesday, on the 28th. I will not attend. I've asked Commissioner Ebright to attend. I've not contacted the new lab applicant that Jaylene said, and since Commissioner Ebright is not here, I will contact him tomorrow because we need a quorum at the Santa Rosa Lab. The other thing is, and I announced there that I would not be re-upping to be a commissioner for the county and Santa Rosa, and am hoping to have a meeting with Supervisor Gore, who does the appointment for the position that I have. And I've let Commissioner Ebright know that. I've also let other commissioners know that July will be my last meeting, but my job still is to contact the lab person for Santa Rosa. And I have asked that Commissioner Ebright cover the meeting for the upcoming lab meeting, and that Commissioner Whistler has graciously said that she would cover for the foundation meeting as well, because I am going away for 8 days. Thank you.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Oops, yes, thank you. I attended the Roanoke Park Chamber of Commerce Noon Times on February the 7th, representing the library. I try to make it there every month. I attended the Black History Month program at the Roanoke Park Library, which is on February 10th, and it was really fun. This gentleman, we had drums all over the place and clothes to put on, and everybody was running around making lots of noise and happy music and singing, and it was really a great experience. I attended the opening of the art show on March the 5th. Those opening reception. Every 6 months in Roanoke Park, there's an art show, and the following 6 months, there's a photography show. And I have just a tiny bit of show and tell. These are hit myself in the face, two beautiful paintings that Jake and I bought at the art show from an artist named Robert Benson. And what I wanted to say about this is, and talking about community centers, which we talked about at our Measure Y committee meeting later on, and our goal of turning our libraries into community centers. So we have this wonderful art show and wonderful photography show. This is an outlet for the artists who really appreciate having a place to show their work. The artist, Robert Benson, who we bought these from, told me on Saturday that the hits to his social media had gone way up after this art show had opened up. So we're really providing a great service to beyond the library patrons, to patrons of the arts. And this is all done by volunteers. We have a 3-member volunteer committee: Pat Anderson, Creighton Bell, and Mary Beth, I always say her name wrong, Mary Rita Williamson. And they're volunteers, and they do this because they love the library and they love the arts. And so, I just wanted to point out the library, the influence of the library in the expanded world of, in this case, the arts. I attended a Sonoma State University Library event, which was Representative Lynn Woolsey's archives were turned over to and established at the SSU Library. Commissioner Heavenridge was also there, chaperoning, is that the right word? Chauffeuring Representative Lynn Woolsey there. But there were a lot of references to archives and lots of references to Catherine Reinhardt, who was there and who is obviously very well known in all archival circles. So it was an excellent event. Oh, yes, the sad news, I was out of town for the lab meeting on February 20th. I had a funeral for a family member out of town, out of state actually, so I missed the lab meeting on February the 20th. And we did have a Measure Y Oversight Committee, which I'll be reporting on later, and that was just last week. Thank you.
I have nothing to report.
Have nothing to report.
All right. So that takes us to, thank you, everybody, to 6.2 Committee and Liaison Reports, 6.2.1 Director Evaluation. Commissioner Garcia and I met with Interim Director Tracy Gray this afternoon for the Director Evaluation meeting, and we will be scheduling one, I believe, in May with the Commission as a whole. So I just wanted to update you on that. So 6.2.2, the Finance Committee report.
Yes, thank you. I've always written a report about the meetings, but it was just last month that I was asked to include that in the agenda. So we included the agenda last month, and then this month we weren't able to due to a lot of changes in schedules. We had holidays, and then the last regular commission dates were changed. So anyway, I've written the report again, and I handed it out tonight as part of the record, but everybody's just getting it tonight. I won't belabor the point. I would like to say that the meeting on February the 12th, we had quite a discussion about the budget, and then we met again on March 12th, just last Monday at the new Rohnert Park headquarters, which was a wonderful place to meet, really nice meeting room, and I think it worked out better for some people, and then other commissioners have farther to drive, unfortunately. At the meeting on Monday, our CFO led us through a lot of the changes that have been made to the budget. They're not a lot of changes, but the changes have been made to the budget based on the input from the commissioners' budget workshop, and we'll be hearing more about that tonight here. We had a very good discussion about establishing capital asset maintenance funds, and what that would be is that we would figure out, we would have a list of capital assets about how long they would last, and then set up a mechanism so money could be set aside. So when it comes time to buy one, we already have that money accumulated, set aside to pay for it, instead of coming out of one particular year's operating budget. So Ken is going to bring us a list of items and some suggestions for implementing this potential policy. He'll bring it to our May Finance Committee meeting. We talked about modifying the major purchases policy, but we had to defer that one more month. We talked about capital expenses in that earlier discussion, and we also talked a little bit about leases. Ken has talked to both the City of Santa Rosa and to a county staff person, and has forwarded lease templates to both of them. So that would be for the City of Santa Rosa and for the county. And then we talked about the fund balance policy in connection with the OPEB committee recommendations. And as the commissioner one of the commissioners actually on the OPEB committee, continued to push that we adopt formally those recommendations. Those recommendations, again, are depositing $750,000 a year out of our operating budget to the OPEB liability, and also transferring $3 million from our reserves to the OPEB trust. This would still, based on my little pencil calculations, still allow us to have 20% in reserves. So we had quite a discussion about that, and Ken is going to come back to us in our April Finance Committee meeting so we can make recommendations to the Commission. We are going to move our meetings down to the HQ for the foreseeable future, so the next meeting will be back on a regular schedule Monday, May 16th at 3 p.m. at Library HQ in Rohnert Park. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that report. And the 6.2.3, the advocacy report, I believe will be given by Commissioner May.
Yes, we did not meet as our scheduled meeting on this last Monday because there wasn't a quorum. There were only two of us. And so here's what we're working on. We are working on a resolution regarding DACA, and we have a draft, and Tracy was going to set it off for a legal opinion. I don't know whether that's happened yet or not, but I am not going to read it yet because we're hoping to have it by the next meeting, but there are still some issues that need to be resolved in it. The lab surveys, I believe, have gone out to lab members. I've had one member of my lab ask about it already. And also, Commissioner Foxen was asked or agreed to meet with her city council regarding the letter from Rohnert Park. And she addressed the points in the letter, and that the city of Cloverdale unanimously supports the library and is currently appreciative of how we interact with them as a JPA member. They stand by their responsibilities and arrangement between the library and the city as a JPA member. And in the report I'm having here, Commissioner Foxen has made an editorial comment. Keeping in touch with our appointed bodies and answering their questions is very important. That's the report.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Garcia, will you give the 6.2.4 Foundation Liaison Report?
Yes, the foundation will be meeting on the 21st, and again, Helena will be attending for me. And what they are interested in is the formation of an ad hoc committee that will address the issue of the foundation's role and the commission's role and how we will work together. And they await that committee to be appointed. Thank you.
Commissioner Neff.
Your mic.
I had a question for the Advocacy Committee. During the Measure Y campaign, we were warned that the library and the commission could not come out and make a political statement in support of Measure Y, right? Does making a statement about DACA fall into this no politics rule?
That is what I have sent to and asked our attorney about.
And that is part of the issue of why it's not coming out of the Advocacy Committee so far.
I was concerned.
I saw another hand someplace.
That was just...
Oh, okay, thank you. Have you completed your report? Yes, okay. Ad hoc standard operating procedures. Reese has been taking that on, and she's not here tonight. Okay, Measure Y Oversight 6.2.6.
Yes, I just took a few notes. We had 6 of the 11 members present, so we did have a quorum, but it wasn't, the representation that would have been nice to have there. We had Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, Cloverdale, Rohnert Park County, and City County reps there, and Ken and I. Ken presented some very detailed reports. There's currently a large surplus year-to-date in the Measure Y funds. That's primarily because of unfilled positions that were approved in the last budget but haven't been put in place yet. The revenues are virtually exactly on track with the budget amounts. It was amazing. Ken's done a great job in projecting the revenues on the sales tax. I pointed out that with the 2-hour extension on Saturdays starting in April, the hours will have been increased by 35% using Measure Y funds, which I think was impressive to the group. And I had some statistics from the Rohnert Park branch. It showed that in January of 17, we had 22,000 plus visitors. By January 18, 25,000 visitors per month. That was just the latest. I just happened to have that with me. They were kind of asking about the impact, whether we were actually having more people come to the library. So we are. All committee members seemed satisfied, I think, with all the detailed reports that Ken had. We went through it very slowly and carefully. There were concerns raised about keeping Roseland open, and in particular, Mr. Hernandez was very concerned about how cold the Roseland branch has been for the last 3 months, and he has contacted Supervisor Hopkins and others about that. He's quite unhappy about it. I gave a brief update on the director search as well as I understood it, since I'm not really part of it, and Ken advised everyone that no Measure Y funds were being used for the search. We briefly talked about the ad hoc OPEB committee recommendations, and Ken stated that no Measure Y funds would be used to implement OPEB policy recommendations. This committee wants to wait until the current year budget is closed out before they meet again. So Ken is going to mail out the third quarter reports to the committee members, and then we're going to do a doodle poll and try to set up the next meeting in late July or early August after this year's budget has been closed out. So the committee is aware that it needs to make a annual report to the commission. Rather than making the report in August, it will make it in September.
And they also are going to make a report to the public, right? That's part of the measure, I think, too. We can go back and look at that. Maybe they could do a close to home or something.
Okay. How would that work in terms of report to the public?
Well, the public voted on this measure that says we're going to have an oversight committee weighing in on how the money is spent, if it's being spent according to what was listed in the measure. So I'm not sure exactly how they want to do that, but the public needs to know that it's happening, that there's...
Maybe they could do it close to home in the Press Democrat.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think Tim has some ideas.
Also, a report to the commission is a report to the public. We're a public open meeting.
Yeah, it is, but I don't know that it gets... I mean, how many people really watch our meetings? Vicki?
I was just going to mention that putting it up on the website also.
Right.
I think that's the way to handle
it. So that
that's one way, certainly.
Yeah.
I think that should be done in any case, but
yeah,
they might want to also do it close to home.
Good. Right. So that we can talk about how it lines up with the strategic plan and so forth. I'm sure that that's the way you're going to want to really publicize it, besides the typical ways of putting it in the Press Democrat and other places.
Good point. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. So that takes us to the consent calendar, and we've taken 8.1 off the consent calendar, so that leaves 8.2, the audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017. And the 8.3, approve the circulation policy. So if there are no objections to these items on the consent calendar, and seeing none, then those are adopted by the commission, both of those.
I have a comment of thank you to the people who did all the work for the circulation policy. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much. Where did Jamie go? Oh, and Kathy. I'm just thinking, so the minutes 8.1 can move down to action items by motion. So we'll put 8.1 after 10.1 and 10.2. Okay, so that takes us to the discussion items, 9.1, Interim Director Gray's report.
Sure. The only thing I will verbally add is I attended the educator kickoff party on Monday, February 26th at the Central Branch. I want to thank Kathy DeWeese and her team for putting this great program together. There were over 100 teachers there getting their educator card. When I arrived, there were lines to get their card and their swag bag, and there were children's and teen librarians throughout the county helping out at the event. The Hublets that Vicki's team had purchased were there, and the staff were giving demos. There were demos in the forum room on all of our online resources. It was a great program and a great turnout, and I want to thank all of the staff who made that happen. It's a great program.
Oh, were you going to update us about Roseland?
So the only update that I have on Roseland is that I met with a representative from the CDC who said the demolition of that area will take place about a year from now, and then he is looking into the heating issue, and will get back to me.
And I didn't see it in here about the status of the Roanoke Park Library HVAC. Do we know what the status is?
The Roanoke Park HVAC, the last email that I received from the Assistant City Manager, which I believe was the beginning of February, had said they were expecting that to be on their March 13th meeting agenda. I did check this morning, and I didn't see it on their meeting agenda, so I will make a follow-up email to the Assistant City Manager to get an updated status on the HVAC replacement for the Roanoke Park Library.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments or questions about the monthly management report? Commissioner May.
I was interested in the change in the positions. The first item in your written report, the change. Would you explain a bit more about what's happening with that? And also, the thing that I may have not seen but I was interested in was where are events and so forth, that public part going to be taken care of?
Sure. So back in, I think it was October or November, when I brought to the commission the organizational structure of changing and having all of the branch managers under one division and then events and adult services and children's services under the other. After the last 3 to 4 months, getting to know more the workload and the span of duties for overseeing that, and then looking at the total FTEs, it was still really imbalanced. I think between the two public service divisions, I think we have about 170 staff. So the division under branches had about 150, and the other division had 20, something like that. So it was still with the workload of that. So getting further information and further understanding of the divisions, looked at it again, going back to splitting the divisions and putting half of the branches under one division manager and half on the other. And this was an idea that I had contemplated back in the summer when I was looking at the organizational structure. So divided the geographical locations as well, especially that the division managers will be regularly attending the Friends meetings and often the lab meetings, and just felt that one division manager for that workload to do that for all of the branches was quite a bit. So I basically just plotted all of the branches on a piece of paper, looked at them geographically, looked at them, how it could fit and have a more balanced set of staff underneath each division. So I put adult services under one, youth services under another, and then split the branches and kept all of the Santa Rosa branches together, and then tried to geographically group them so that there was a balance of each division has a large branch. So Central is on one side, Petaluma is the other, smaller branches, and then the middle branches, and it came out to a more even amount of staff underneath each division as well. So as far as the events and programs, so these two divisions are going to have to continually work together closely. The Youth Services Administrator, Kathy DeWeese, will be continuing to work with her team and the children's librarians with all of the branches, and there will be an events coordinator working directly under her. and the Adult Services Administrator, which is a position we're currently recruiting for. There will be an events coordinator under that person. So the 2 division managers, the Adult Services and Youth Services Administrators, and the event coordinators will work very closely along with the our community engagement coordinator. And then with the teams that I had put together back in January, I've updated those a little, but the different teams of adult services, teen services, youth services will all be working together for events and programs. So it's a new dynamic, but I thought it was a more manageable flow and workload, and these 2 division managers will definitely be working closely together. The branch managers team will still be involved in events and programs as well, and I believe the chair and vice chair of those of the branch managers team will be sitting on the adult services team, and I think there's representatives that sit on the youth and the teens and children's services team.
Thank you.
So looking at this, it says that an offer was extended on one of those. Has that wrapped up for one of them?
Yes, I should have. I will be at the Public Library Association conference this week, but I will be sending out a weekly update this week in the next couple of days, and I will have an announcement in that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions about the management activities report, Commissioner McKenzie?
I just wanted to say how much I appreciated the picture of Christopher Carlin and Michelle Lee. And I love the fact, this is one of the many benefits of moving HQ to Rohnert Park, that our staff can go across the street to Cal Skate and on their breaks, and then Michelle is going on daily walks on the nearby trails. I know other people are also using the trails. So anyway, pleased about that. And this lets me segue into applauding all of those staff who were involved in the planning and the move. It seemed to be virtually seamless, and I think the new location is wonderful, and I really appreciated the meetings down there. It's calm, cool, and quiet. I wanted to note here that Mike Daw apparently got the AV installed in the meeting room. The meeting rooms are really great to work in. And again, just thank you. I mean, moving is huge, and installing phone systems is huge, and all of these things are just being done very smoothly, and thanks to all involved.
I did have a question for Vicki Turbovich, and that's how the phone system is going. I know there have been some blips in the whole process, but overall it went smoothly. But
I think so. I want to say to you that normally migrating a phone system is like 4 to 6 months, and we did this in kind of like 3 weeks. So I feel like we've done a phenomenal job together with the vendor. We're working out some kinks right now. Over the weekend, I had them, I talked with the phone company that's providing the SIP trunks, and we did a reset of the gateway. So I think we've had some instances of dropped calls, which is very typical when you have a new startup like this. And I wouldn't say there was a high volume, probably 5 or 6 across the board, and that's a few phone calls for an organization our size. We're still working out the auto attendants, so I'm going to continue to work on those. We did change the main number of the central library, so from the 5450831, that's the number now assigned to the headquarters. And we wanted to give the central library its own new number so that it can stand out like a branch, the big branch that it is, number one. And number two, I think that by doing that, I made some changes in the auto attendants. So when you call the HQ, one of the second things you hear is that the new phone number is this for the central library, and to connect to that, to press 2, and you'll get right there. And so, again, I'm still working out the kinks of of what those auto attendants say. One of the things that I have heard from customers or patrons is that, gee, now I get to talk to a real person, they say to me. And this happened when I was at Rohnert Park. I'm used to listening to a recording, and the lady says to me, this is so pleasant. And I've heard that also from the Central Library. They actually, all the calls go directly to the service desk circulation, and then they're moved out to wherever they need to go, or they're getting taken care of right there. So I think we've made some changes. Staff is adjusting. I think largely the staff is pleased with the fact that, you know, they can hear on the phones when they're talking to someone. The voice quality is terrific. So I don't know, does that answer your questions?
It does. Any other
Does anybody
questions?
else have any questions? One thing we are doing with respect, and I've just gotten the first one of these in, is that for the service desks, we're looking at a couple of different things. One is some headsets with noise canceling microphones so that the reference librarians and service people can walk around, you know, if they need to go to the shelves and things like that. So we're starting to look at some headsets that will provide some freedom. These aren't as important at the smaller branches as they are at the large central library, because the distance from the service desk to the shelves is, you know, somewhat different. So I got the first one of those in last week, and we got it put together this morning, and I'm having the IT staff kind of experiment with it. And then secondly, the big push is longer cords for the handsets. So, and those are specialty because they're IP phones. So we've ordered in some 12-footers for the service desks as well, so they have a little more length and so forth. Other questions? Yes.
Could you repeat the phone number for headquarters?
Yeah, the phone number for headquarters is 707-545-0831.
Oh, and Central?
And Central is 707-308-3020.
Okay. Okay. And then I got a letter from a patron who was singing the praises of Hoopla and how it has gotten her more engaged with the library. And I'll just read a little bit. She did also have a question. She said there's been a change in Hoopla, too, that she was not expecting. But she says, I would like to express my extreme gratitude for Hoopla and, to a lesser extent, Access 360. I've gone from someone who lost their library card 5 years ago and didn't care to someone who regularly not only listens to 2 to 3 books a week on Hoopla, but who also now goes to my branch to get 5 to 10 physical books every few weeks as well. I've told countless friends about Hoopla since the library picked up their services, and have personally increased not only Hoopla usership among my friends, but also library patronage. I know this to be a fact from speaking to my friends. I'm also in a number of online reading groups and discuss the library because of Hoopla. They're with people from other states who are having similar experiences. I can only imagine the impact this will have on long-term relevancy of the library systems, and I do hope ours has the patience to see this through and keep it up. And then she says that there was a change in Hoopla recently where she lost access to thousands of titles, because I think there's a way to keep a list of books that you're interested in looking at. I don't know. She says Sonoma County library users just lost access to thousands of titles. I personally lost track of over 150 books I had favorited on Hoopla. I have no idea what they were, as I stupidly was using this service as my to-be-read list. I just wanted to let you know how the impact of your decisions are having both positive and negative effects. So I don't know what the change was. I just wanted to.
It might have been a change at Hoopla, but if you want to send me the patron's name,
certainly, I'll be happy.
And we'll look the borrower barcode number up, and maybe we can find out if we can restore that. I will say one thing about Hoopla, which it's just been phenomenal how well it's been received. It is we have opened the floodgates with that product. It is not free, and people are using it like crazy, and we're just going to have to really monitor and assess how much we can continue to afford. Because right now, I think, Jamie, we're hitting about $20,000 to $25,000 per month. That's how popular it is. I mean, and that's hundreds and thousands of patrons also. So just, think about this. An ebook probably goes the highest cost ebooks, the e-audio books, from the most expensive publisher is $3.99. I don't know how much more fun you can have for $3.99. So, I mean, I guess the point is we're going to have to figure out how to continue to sustain that. And I think it's really clear that, when we work with our friends and so forth, when they say, what can we do? What do you need? I think we're going to have to relook at, we put an initial amount into that and fund that. I think, what did we put in, 150,000 this year? 250. Yeah, 250,000. So then, what happens is we set a cap for the day. Okay, and right now we've hit 25,000 per day, and we've looked at ways in which we can, come down off of that, and when we do, then people hit the cap. As Tim knows, you log on and it's refreshed for the day at a certain hour of the evening. And when someone hits the cap, then they get kicked out and they can't borrow anything. And, then we start hearing from our customers, we start hearing from our patrons, and they're like, oh, wow, what happened? I love that service. So I think, circling back to what I just said about the friends, is that, we're going to have to look to the friends when they say, what can I do? We're going to have to say, well, you might need to help us with Hoopla. Because, in Hoopla, it's just not the e-audio books, but I think the model that they have for downloading and the streaming and the idea that more than one person can listen to the same audiobook because of their licensing model. So that's another thing that makes that more popular than some of the things that we have. But we have more products like that coming at us all the time, and I think we just have to, it's going to be a balancing act. Because people are still streaming into the library to get stuff and use our tech, and so I think that it just speaks to the fact that we found a service that our patrons absolutely love, and if we take it away, it's going to really be painful. So we just have to, we're just going to have to monitor it very carefully, because, the kids are going after the comic books and the anime, and, then there's the downloadable television shows and movies, is in addition to the e-audio books and e-books. It has everything, and yet there's still more stuff to do. So, in one sense, it's very exciting. In another sense, it's like, oh my,
and we've opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, that's right. And when we first turned it up, it was so popular, we were turning people away, weren't we, Tim?
Yes, and I was part of that group. I stopped using it for a while because I just could never go to book. But it's easy to access.
Yeah, it's very easy to access. And, from the e-resources that we have, I think the model is one of the easiest ones for people to use. And so because it's that easy, people use it. And I think it'd be real interesting to come here, and I'll work with Rano. We'll come here at another meeting and give you some real stats about the number of people that are using this. And as your email stated, it also brings people right into the library, because now the same people that like this lady that said she lost her library card and didn't care, and now she's checking out 10 or 12 books a month or more. You know, it does say something about, you know, what triggers your imagination and so forth. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Vicki. So that takes us to the monthly financial report. Are there questions about that? Do you want to come up, or just if there are questions?
See, I think it starts on page 107, and there's really only one thing I wanted to point out, and that's on page 109. Under the, let's see, it's probably like the fifth column over where it says actual current month. You'll see that we got about $2.3 million in tax revenue in the month of January, and that's a bit of an oddity. Usually we get it in December and April, and then they true everything up in June. What happened is there was a large amount of prepayments due to the income tax revisions, and so that's why we received that $2.3 million in January. That doesn't mean that it's $2.3 million extra. It's just that we've got it a few months earlier than we would have received it. So,
okay.
Thought that was worth pointing out.
And thank you also for that list of the different account codes and what they mean that you gave us, I think, at the
budget meeting.
The chart of accounts.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
There were a couple of codes that I didn't find on that list that are on this, but I can.
We've got to update it. Sometimes we get into new account numbers and don't update the
and
list.
there was one code that I had forgotten what it meant because of that local BDS, and then I remember that you had explained that that's just like a blank for us to use for our own
right, I think,
account tracking. And
yeah, the account descriptions are set by the county, so
right.
They kind of spit out, and I think local BDS means local bids. But,
right. Yeah, I kind of kicked myself for it. It took me a long time to remember that
right.
that was what it meant. I'm like, what the heck? Are there other questions, Commissioner May?
Two things. One of them is it was wonderful to pass the audit today, and I know that didn't happen accidentally, so I thank you and your office for following through, and we didn't have things that we needed to be concerned about, so thank you. Mm-hmm. I pay attention to the percentage of the remaining budget that's left,
right.
And I noticed that on some things, like we're almost 200% spent on telecommunication wireless, mm-hmm. and 85 overspent on printing and binding and data lines, so that we're over budget on those items. I'm wondering what that's about.
Yeah, the wireless one is.
Could you, would you do me a favor, and could you say the number that you're talking about so we can find them easily?
51901.
On page 111?
Right. 51909 and 52118.
Right. 52118. Oh, that supplies. Okay. The telecommunications and the data lines, there was I think, wasn't that? Yeah, there was a mix-up in the communication expense, which is up near the top, 51021, and the telecommunications line. So we're under in one and over in the other, and it was just a matter of putting it in the right area. The 51909, the telecommunication wireless services, when we were budgeting last year, we didn't realize that, the new law that was passed for all the privacy things. So we've since gotten cell phones for all the managers and administrators and the commissioners.
Right, okay.
And iPads. And so that's why that is higher. than budgeted. And the printing and binding supplies, I'd really have to look into that. It looks like the majority of it came in January, but I'd have to look at that to see why that was the case. It could have been something miscoded there. I know we've done that before and in that area, so I'll have to look into that one to get an answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So everybody's done. Okay, so then that takes us to 9.3, the budget workshop session review. Before you start, I just wanted to thank you all for your, all of you for, but I know a huge part of it is finance stuff, and I really appreciated the budget workshop that you all put on for us.
Yeah, thank you. It was a team effort. I think the number part of it is easy, and so everybody else really pitched in and made sense of the numbers to me. As you recall, there were very few requests for changes from the February 26th Commission, the budget workshop. One of the things were the pie charts, and those are on page 119 and 120. The one on page 119 is the 2018-19 proposed budget, and the 17-18 is on the next page. And the biggest difference you'll see there, as we discussed during the workshop, is the percentage in salary and benefits. That went up the most. The pie itself didn't grow at all because of the revenue staying flat, but there were still increases in COLAs, the PERS that we talked about, and the retiree health care. So that is a trend that we don't want to continue, to see that percentage go up. Hopefully next year it'll drop back down a little bit more, given the hopefully rise in revenue. But that's the biggest difference that you'll see with the pie charts.
I pulled out a pie chart from last year's budget workshop, and that part of the pie was like 73%. So it's nice to see it.
Yeah, it's
because of the revenue.
Yeah, it's down, definitely down from where we were before the sales tax. But the other couple changes that were requested to be made was we just reclassified the budget for possible Roseland expenses down, and I put that under 52162, which is on page 126, under special department expense. And then a few lines down from that, like 4 lines down, you'll see the other change. It was discussed about moving some of the branch-specific capital items to maintenance reserve, and what I labeled it there under 54305 is a maintenance reserve dash large items. So that's where those sit now. And those are the types of things that we've identified that need being done, and we're going to talk to the various cities and to see how that may happen, how those can get done. So.
I'm sorry, I think I missed that number. So the special department expense, that was where the Roseland potential.
Right.
Okay.
And then the down about 4 lines, 54305 is the maintenance reserve dash large items. And so those were the changes that were made. The overall budgets didn't really change at all, the bottom lines. So that, I rolled all those changes into the departmental, the divisions, spreadsheets also. So They all tie out. I don't know if I know you've had maybe a month to look at all the numbers. I'm sure you've all been looking at it every night, and I don't know if you have any questions.
Recently, every night.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I just have a question about the replacement funds for the fire. And forgive me if I'm being naive here about it, but essentially we have replacement funds from two sources. One of them is the insurance, and the second is the state grant. And has that been included in the budget so that the materials budget is not losing $100,000 now, or is it just a wash because it's replacement?
We've included, well, I'm not sure about the state grant. The $58,000 that we received from the insurance reimbursement, Jamie has put in the hierarchy and they are spending it right now. So that's good. And I'm not sure where I think it was $30,000 from the state.
Could you repeat that? We didn't hear.
The $30,000 grant money will be spent by the end of June this year, so
Okay,
it doesn't
so it's
impact next year's
Correct.
budget.
Thank you.
Other questions, Commissioner McKenzie?
Well, my big comment is how wonderful I thought the whole budget process went this year. I thought this was the first time, it's taken us a while as a commission to gel on our priorities, and we did that early enough, and the staff looked at our priorities and gave us all the information we needed and calculated what we wanted to see. The budget workshop was terrific. I'm just so impressed by the whole budget process this year, and many thanks to you, Ken, and to Tracy, and all the staff that were involved in this. It's just day and night. I was just so happy with the whole process. And I did want to, I put in my Finance Committee report, but I think I forgot to say it out loud, the questions that we had about the specific fixes, which you just referenced, Ken, which was different libraries' parking lots and different libraries' sliding doors and all that stuff. That money is still in here, but rather than specify it like it was at the budget workshop, it's in a catch-all category, and the first thing we're going to try to do is talk to the different cities and make sure that they will, or try to see what part that they can play in paying for some of these things. So the money is still here, and as you already pointed out about Roseland, the money is still here. Should it be needed, but it's not specified.
Right.
So anyway, but again, to me, this is just day and night. I just felt this whole process was fantastic, and just great, and I just thank you so much, and Tracy also, and the staff.
One thing I wanted to also bring up, and at the April 2nd meeting, I will also be including just very, very rough budget figures for the special revenue funds. It's more of an operational item that we need you to approve those budgets so I can get them loaded into the accounting system. Otherwise, we would not be able to pay any bills out of those funds.
That's the FOL, right? The Friends.
Yeah, it's the Friends, the foundation, it's the bequests, in July, we're going to be starting the Conde Reading Room, so there's going to be money expended out of there. And if we don't have the budget in, the system just stops everything and we're not able to pay bills. So I've sent that. It's really a small, rough spreadsheet. There's really no specifics to it at all. It's really just me putting down numbers and a little bit high numbers, so we're sure that we can't pay bills. I sent that to the Finance Committee a week or so ago, and so that'll be in the April 2nd meeting, so we can, we've run into a problem where we ran out of money before at the end of the year, and it was a nightmare, so.
Okay, Great, thanks. And Commissioner May, you had a question?
Yeah, is this when you were going to talk about the capital assets maintenance fund?
The capital assets maintenance fund, yeah, we talked about that at the finance committee. We're going to bring it back to them at the May finance committee meeting. What I'll be doing is reaching out to Dave, the facilities manager, and Vicki, the IT manager, really getting their input on, you know, the items that we should be setting aside money for and what the useful lives are of those types of things. So.
And that's part of the fund balance, basically.
Yeah, that'll be part of the fund balance as we move forward.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And yes, you know, I think it just felt like a much more collaborative process. So,
yeah.
And I think we're understanding it a lot better.
Yeah.
So thank you for the clarity on all of it.
Yeah, Tracy really led us through it and helped us see the light a little more on that, at least for me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, so that takes us to item 9.4, collection development and management policy, and that is Jamie Anderson.
Hello. So this is an existing policy, a collection management policy on page 145 of your packet. We're bringing this for you to discuss tonight and give input. These are minor revisions, really. The policy was last looked at in 2010. And so it's been a number of years. We had one of our new teams that were established this January, the collections and e-content team. They took a look at this policy, suggested the changes that you see tonight. It was also looked at by all of the branch managers and the operational management team. So in the cover memo, I've outlined what the changes were, and they're reflected in the policy with the strike-through changes indicated. And I'm here to answer your questions or listen to your comments.
Commissioner May.
Yes, my first question is on page 145. All staff members, point 3 in the selection responsibilities. All staff members and general public may recommend materials for consideration for purchase. I would just like to be reminded if there's a way for the general public to, is there a place on the website that you can request? Okay.
Yes. Vicki, could you go to our homepage?
Because I've got a request.
It's an online form.
Right.
So from the homepage, the library's website, the Books and More menu, the first drop-down menu on the left, and about halfway down, Suggest a Purchase. That's the link that takes you to the online form, and we get 10 to 20 suggestions a day, roughly, from the public.
Okay. This next question I have is, let me get this back down here. On page 146, again, gifts. It says, if material gifts are not added to the library's collection, they may be given to a friends of the library group or be discarded. My question is, how do you decide which friends of the library group get them?
Well, the library that owns the item. So if it was a Petaluma-owned item, it would go to the Petaluma Friends.
Okay.
If it was owned by any of the Santa Rosa libraries, it would go to the Santa Rosa Friends.
Okay.
And so forth.
All right. That was my question. And then on the next page, it seems to me that something may be missing here on the objections thing. If a patron wishes to pursue the objections, he or she will be asked to complete a request for consideration by library resources form. Each formal request will be given full consideration and be reviewed in accordance with the selection criteria. And in this policy and any additional selection guidelines the library normally follows for the collection in question. Materials that have been questioned will remain in the active collection until the Library Commission has made a determination of its status. If I recall previously, the decisions could be made before it came. What my reading of this is that every item that is questioned comes to the Library Commission, but in all my years in the Library Commission, there's been one that came all the way to the Library Commission level. So basically, I'm just confused about the process.
I understand what you're saying, and I'll work on that sentence.
Okay.
You're right, not every request comes all the way to the commission.
Right.
Sometimes it stops at the library director. It depends on if the patron
It's not
wants
satisfied.
to pursue it further. Right.
Yeah, okay, those were my questions.
Any other comments or questions? All right, so thank you, Jamie. I just saw a couple of typos, but I'm sure you'll catch them.
Okay. I hope so.
Huh?
I hope so.
You will. It's just like libraries capitalize some places, not other places.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
So I could give you my notes if you want. So we'll see this on April 2nd?
You'll see it very soon, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so then that takes us to action items by motion. We moved 10.1 to next month to a closed session, and 10.2 legal services agreement for alternative/additional services. Let me find that. That's next.
153.
Okay, so Tracy, you want to start out talking, and I'm happy to answer questions. You and I met with Ann Keck, so.
Sure. So this agreement to enter an agreement with Keck Law Offices as a secondary legal counsel for anything that we need that perhaps our primary counsel has a conflict of interest or something to that effect. So Commissioner Whistler and I met with this law firm, and she sent us this agreement so that we can use this law firm for any cases that we need that we could not use our other firm for.
Any questions? All right, do I have a motion?
There's two.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to say that I was pleased that it's a Santa Rosa local firm. And
Yes, and in addition, a little background on Ann Keck is that at the time the JPA Review Committee was in operation, Ann Keck was the attorney who assisted the committee, so she has some insight into the JPA too. So I think we could find that very helpful. So is there, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hauser?
I'm being a little picky here. On page 155, paragraph 7, termination, and then you have A and you have B. And A, should the library wish to terminate, it starts off, but B starts off, Keck Law Offices may terminate. And that's not absolutely parallel language, although the implication it's parallel, that either party can terminate. But when you have a document and you have kind of parallel things like that, and it's not the exact same language, it raises suspicions. So I don't know what you want to do about that. It would be nicer if it said, if the library may terminate.
yeah, I agree.
My attitude.
Okay. I don't know that there's a difference in the ultimate results, but I don't think that's a big change to make. So we can do that and send it to ANCAC to sign off on, but it seems like it's very possible to do. Any other questions? Commissioner May?
Again, a possible naive question. Who decides if there's a conflict?
Well,
how's that done?
Well, in the situation we currently have with the city of Rohnert Park, who has also employed our regular attorney firm that we employed in January, there is a conflict.
So the director decides, basically? I mean, who?
I think it could be the director, the commission, the law firm. It could be
any of those three?
Yeah.
Okay. That's just.
Tracy, did you want to say something else?
No. Okay. A good law firm should instantly say if they have a conflict and say, we got to get out of this.
So the agreement that you all, that we brought to the commission a couple months ago for our other law firm did have a clause in it about a conflict that they knew of, so it was in their agreement.
All right. Do I have a motion that once this change is made, as suggested by Commissioner Hauser, that...
I so move.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So could you be sure to talk to Tracy after about what the change should be? Thank you. So that takes us to, oh, right, 8.1, the minutes, regular meeting minutes, February 5th, 2018, and February 26th, 2018. Was there one of those that was particularly?
February 26th is what I was referring to. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are two things that were not mentioned in the minutes. First of all, thank you. It was almost like herding cats. It was that kind of conversation. I'm surprised that Commissioner May has not mentioned his comment about the mobile library. But my comment is regarding in support of the mobile library. And I believe there were two commissioners who saw that as a solution for maybe even Roseland and to reach other areas. And that was just something that I had thrown out in terms of a mobile library. And I believe there was another commissioner's support and another commissioner who had a different idea. And that's not mentioned.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
what page
I had it
and
marked,
what
I had it
lines?
marked.
Is it on page 2 of the 26?
Here I was. I thought I was prepared. Here it is. We had the budget discussion was on page 22.
Well, I see on page 2, Roseland Library status.
Wait a minute, it's on
line
page
49.
8 of the minutes. Page 8 of the minutes.
Page 22 of the packet.
Page 22 of the packet.
What line, do you know?
No, there is no line. There was no mention of the mobile library, and we did have a discussion about that.
The mobile library for Roseland?
No,
Mobile library in general?
Well, on page 16 or 2, there was a discussion of, Commissioner Garcia commented on a mobile library as a potential temporary location for Roseland that can eventually be used for services in areas such as Bodega Bay, Annapolis, Larkfield, and that the foundation is willing to raise $500,000 for a mobile library.
What page is that of the packet?
Well, in 16 of the packet, yes. So it's at line 49. It starts the paragraph, Roseland Library. So it's page 2 of the February 26 minutes, which is also page 16
53,
of the
line
pattern.
53. Okay. Right. Thank you.
And in that case, I
But
would like to add.
when I read that, I thought perhaps Commissioner May would like
To add that I made a comment that it seemed to me that let's see if I can state this, that it's up to the commission to notify or inform staff of a need that they see, and it's up to the staff to present possible solutions, one of which could be a mobile library. Is that?
Yeah, that you said more, but yeah, that's essentially the gist of it. So could you
Write that out.
write that out for Jaylene so
Right.
that she can add that?
Right.
Once these are approved, it can be adjusted. Were there any other, Commissioner McKenzie?
One more, and that was that I made the statement that for Measure Y funds, I realize we are this year opening up the libraries 2 more hours on Saturday, starting the first Saturday in April. But there was no additional hours, and the acting director came up with how we fall in the middle of other libraries in the area, Mendocino, Marin, and all of those things. But I made the statement, and I still hold this to be true, that people voted for the tax measure for more hours for the library. And I have still made the argument, and I still believe that the library is open to everyone 24/7, given our electronic capability, the use of Hulu, the use of just getting on your computer and reserving books and things like that. But as a rule, I believe the general public wanted to see more library hours. And I said a bunch of other stuff about other uses of Y money, but I would like to make the statement that it was my understanding that most people who voted for Y voted for more access to a brick and mortar library.
And so where would that go in on this?
Where would that go? It was probably under budget discussion, and it was before review of 10-year projections, 377. So I would say it'd be 369. Okay, I'm looking at page 9, but page 23.
Yeah, of the
Okay.
packet.
23, and I would see it as 376.
Okay, so again,
It is Commissioner Garcia's opinion.
Well, if you could write it out.
I will do that,
send
and I will give it to Jaylene.
And then
Thank
we can approve the other minutes, and then these can just be added to the April 2nd meeting for the February 26th meeting, we can, if you could make those changes to the minutes, and we'll just put it on the consent calendar with the minutes from today. Commissioner McKenzie.
Just one last point. Adding Commissioner Garcia's comments about added hours, I also made comments after she made her comments that we have increased the hours by 35%. So I would like that added also after.
And you'll send that to her?
Well, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Yeah. And then also if my name could be spelled correctly on the February 5th commissioners' names, be appreciated. Spelled correctly on the 26th, but on the February 5th, it's not spelled right. Small point, but.
Okay. But it's important. Okay, so can we have a motion for the February 5th?
So moved.
All in favor of February 5th minutes?
Aye.
Aye. And we'll carry over the February 26th minutes to the consent calendar next month. Okay, so that takes us to item 12, lab appointments, and we have a lab appointment for Cloverdale.
So moved.
So I feel it's important to read these out for the lab members. Is there somebody who'd like to read this out for Commissioner Foxen, who's absent?
I will.
Okay.
Library advisory appointments. I move that by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission reappoint the following applicant to the term as listed. Patricia Ann Serio to the position on the Cloverdale Library Advisory Board for a term ending on June 30th, 2022.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Heck, I lost my agenda. All right, so that takes us to items for the monthly newsletter.
I would like to suggest a thank you to the Lantern Group for the involvement of citizens to see their needs for their library, their community.
Okay. Thank you. That says what?
For the the involvement of community members to meet the needs of their community.
Okay.
About an update on the director search?
Yes. Okay.
Might as well comment on the budget process. Going smoothly this year, and expect to pass our budget in May, is it?
April, I think. Yeah.
April
next
meeting?
month, at
Okay.
our next meeting.
Since this goes to, electeds, they would probably be interested in knowing that the audit has been accepted and
Yeah.
was fine.
I thought we put that in last time, but maybe we didn't.
Did we?
Well, we just approved it, so probably this time
No,
would
I'll
be
just
good.
give it to her.
That's so many.
So it was accepted without
Condition or?
any issues.
Right.
There's a term for that.
Yeah, I couldn't think of it.
No major findings. No reportable findings, I think this is.
There's no reportable findings. All right, okay, so agenda items for future commission meetings. So it looks like, okay, Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, I'd like to, I really like meeting at 5:30 tonight. And I know we're going to have.
You do like meeting?
Yeah, I know we're going to have a lot of new people this summer, but so not necessarily agendizing it for next time, but I would like to put it out there that we look again at the time that we meet and also the place that we meet. We had our budget hearing at Rohnert Park City Council, and we have the same ability to record the meetings. I don't know if that anybody'd like it or anything like that, but I think it's worth discussing whether, since HQ is down there, that we might use another facility for our meetings.
Okay.
I second that. I have another idea.
Okay. Okay, all right, so I think other than that, we have a pretty full agenda next
I have
month.
another item for the agenda, and I'm not sure, I've mentioned this to you before, but I'm not sure what form it might take. But, and I'm not good at pronouncing her last name, but I would like to either adjourn in honor of, or have a resolution in honor of Linda Schiltgen. I believe that she gave service to the library above and beyond legal representation, and now that she's no longer doing that, I would like to acknowledge that we know that she's done a lot for the library.
I second that, if that's a motion.
Okay.
Not a motion, it would be on the agenda, and I don't know what
We can
form that
discuss
would.
it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Then that next meeting is budget adoption and regular meeting, Monday, April 2nd, and it's currently scheduled for 6:30 PM here in the City Council chambers. I didn't say that. That could be a typo. So we are adjourned, and it is 20 till 8. I know.